Hi, everyone. We're here today to talk about how you keep from slipping off the straight and narrow path. How do you keep yourself on track? What do we do? How do you remember the way that you felt before, how miserable you were, what's going on with that? I'm here with Mike Collins, the Sugar Free Man, and he has a summit going on right now, right? The Quick Sugar Summit is happening
Yes, we have
now.
a replay of the January event. It's going on right now, free.
And, it's free. How do people get to I'll put you on there to No Sugar Nation.
Oh, just go to quitsugarsummit.com.
There you go, quitsugarsummit.com. All kinds of wonderful speakers who are experts in their field and all kinds of knowledge to learn. So go check that out. And today we're talking about how I don't want to forget how miserable I was when I was on my 8-day binge and how awful it was during and especially after. The aftermath of that was really difficult getting back on track. I'm only like day 7 today of really clean eating and finally getting the sugar and the chemicals, physically out of my body. And that is feeling much better. I'm sleeping better. I have more energy. I am feeling overall better. I have more hope. I'm more motivated. All of those things that are coming along too, because afterwards, man, did I feel so downtrodden. It was brutal.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, we talked about just real quickly before we, got on that there needs to be some sort of built-in remembering system so that when you have an urge the next time that the memory of that 4 or 5 days of rough living there, of feeling not motivated and hopeless and these kind of, shameful and all these kind of feelings circling around. Not to mention probably feeling physically bad. And, if you can journal it and make sure you have it in a place. And we talked about this a couple episodes back, and I think it's important that some people move towards pleasure, their goals, how they'll feel, what they'll weigh, and all that kind of stuff. And some people, myself included, move away from pain. And so they don't want to remember the pain. And some people believe that it can make a self fulfilling prophecy if you're remembering the pain. But in these circumstances, when that comes up, when the urge comes up, all you do is remember, I just can't go through those 4 or 5 days again. And then and you start to, get better. But one of the things, I think the most important thing you said is the hope, right? You were not, you had lost hope and motivation. And I think we've also talked, I know we have in these episodes, is that a lot of this is biochemical, genuinely biochemical in your brain, right? You used like whatever the short amount of time you were, binging or with your friends or whatever, you used up like 3 months of dopamine and serotonin, you like kept pumping it manually with the substances, and you were depleted. You basically showed up after that depleted and literally just feeling bad. And it takes a while to come back, to restore, to remove, to remediate, to come back, to be back to normal baseline, a good baseline.
Yeah, back to like some type of equilibrium, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And the other thing I have going on is that I'm off of that Cymbalta. I'm off my serotonin reuptake inhibitor, and I think I can feel that. I'm happy that I'm off it and that, I'm going to, with time, get back to some type of balance where I have a healthy amount of serotonin and dopamine and all of those things in my system. I'm hoping that happens. I don't know if I've ever been in that situation. And so I feel it. I feel a little bit dysthymic, that just kind of means that you're not really depressed, but you're just not really happy. You're just kind of like, ho hum, here's life. And I have a great life right now. I have all kinds of wonderful things going on in my life right now.
Oh, like I mean, you don't even really know how excited I am right now for this, for you and for this process and for the future of your career and the future of our movement. I've talked about this woman before. But there's a woman, Dr. Kelly Brogan, who talks about in her first couple books about the getting off of SSRIs, and really at its core. is exactly like our work, which is you need to come back and deal with the things you originally got on them for. And it really wasn't, quote unquote, you were depressed or whatever. It was there was issues you weren't dealing with, that you numbed out, and this was one of the avenues that you took. And the again, a clarity and a disclaimer for the FDA and all of the three-letter agencies, like, we are not doctor. Well, actually, Cammy is a doctor, but I'm not a doctor, and we're not here to help you get off SSRIs or help you get off sugar, flour, and caffeine. But the process is similar. It's identical. That if you do not understand that these substances are powerful enough, and remember, dose makes the poison, that you are doing the same process that Dr. Brogan describes in these books, where you're basically returning to whatever issues you had and recreating self-soothing, anxiety relieving practices in your life that you need to move forward that do not include substances. If there's a succinct way to say what the key to all of this is, and the fact that you're now really not super depressed, you're not, thinking to get back on them, the Cymbalta or whatever, it's amazing. Genuinely, it's a credit to the healing you've done over the last year from the sugar. We find this all the time, Cam, you know it, is that when people get off sugar, flour, and caffeine, their SSRIs and depression meds are too strong. They make them woozy and everything because they're so powerful. And then they begin the process of tapering with their physician and with their provider. They start moving towards getting off of them. And I think that the two are so intertwined and so related that, your metabolic health certificate that you're getting, your MD, and your own personal story is going to be so valuable to people, genuinely.
Yeah, sometimes, well, I have to say that I have to be patient. I have to be patient with this because sometimes I do think about going back on the Cymbalta, I'm not gonna lie.
Okay, good.
Sometimes I'm sitting around and I'm like, "God, I would feel so much better if I was on that drug." But, I think that but for the most part, I'm just being patient. I'm writing the adjustment because you don't just taper off of it and life is hunky dory. I'm thinking 6 months to a year. It's going to take time to really adjust and to kind of get that equilibrium that we were kind of talking about. But, when you're mentioning Kelly Brogan, and I'll put her name down at the end of the video for some people that might want to learn more about her. And you're talking about getting back to the issues and like recreating soothing practices and things like that. For me, this is the first time. And I'm sure that there's people out there that are listening to this that are learning for the first time how to do healthy, soothing, self soothing practices.
Yes.
Because I've been eating, sugar since I was 2 or 3 years old. And like, I remember when my kids were little and I was working so hard and it was so crazy and everything, if we would go to a family event, I would try to make it so that we would drive separate. Usually I was coming from work is what would usually happen. So my ex-husband would go there with the kids and then I would come from work. I would try to leave a little earlier before he came home with the kids so that I could get home and eat ice cream and cookies and sugar and watch TV and be by myself and have this time like sequestered, secretive time where I'm getting my sugar and just feeling like relief, like just feeling happy and just feeling like, and I obviously did it more than once because I remember doing it, like time and time again, whenever I could be alone and get some relief with my sugar. So yeah, this is new territory for me. This is, healthy new coping mechanisms. And we just did a lecture. I did a little talk the other day when I covered for Marnie for one of her meetings on somatic self-soothing techniques.
Okay.
And, hand on your heart and take a deep breath and press on your fingers and all these different techniques. There were 16 different techniques that I went over, and it was just wonderful because these are like new to me. These are like learning. Like I really like I really like Hand on My Heart. It's so easy, and I love the feel of somebody touching me. I mean, it happens to be myself, but, I just love that feeling, and it's very calming and soothing to me. And so huh?
This is amazing. They were actually talking about this on my meeting last night that about your class with that one that day. They were talking about your somatic stuff, and you can fill in more, but I've known for a long time that you can create oxytocin, the bonding chemical that you would be with a baby or a hug or a kid or a lover or something by touching yourself. One of the women was doing this, just duplicating what you had taught them. So I think that's super important. It's part of our work, and it's a great construct for people to understand that they can soothe themselves in a multitude of ways. There's lots of ways, but that's one of
Yeah, so I have to admit that I did ask ChatGPT to help me with it.
them.
I specific and, because I knew of some, but he came up with 16 of them, which were great, and I asked him specifically for ones that you could do while you're sitting down and you're still, like if you're driving or if you're sitting, because there's a lot of them that you can do when you're more moving, but I wanted some that were quick and easy. So
Sure.
I'm gonna go ahead and do a video on those because I think it would be nice to get those out
I
and
think
a
that's a
little
great idea.
summary.
I think it's a great idea. And it's hard for people to realize that this is one of the necessities of this type of change process or recovery, whichever you want to call it. Because, like I said many times, people come usually for weight loss or a type 2 diabetes diagnosis or pre-diabetes, and they just want a food plan and an exercise plan, and they they don't get it any deeper. They don't think it any deeper. They don't know it any deeper. And it's not common knowledge any deeper that this is a very different change process that people need to go through in order to maintain a long-term abstinence or major reduction in sugar use.
I was at a meeting the other day when somebody was talking about change versus transformation. And I really like that. And she was talking about how much deeper and transformation is. A change is something that can happen in a short period of time, but transformation, and she had been, abstinent for years and noticed, and going through that whole transformation to somebody who's different and new. So I'm in my transformation, and boy, is it not happening fast enough for me.
Well, I mean, that and everyone should know that that's always the case, right? You're always wanting to go, what's that phrase? My reach is always extends my grasp. It's like you're always trying to, if you're working this type of a protocol or transformation, you're always wanting to get a little bit better. And so I think I call that the actual living in process. That's the skill set. One of the best things I ever heard, and it'll relate to you and me and everybody I know, and that this guy Kevin Kelly, he's been around 100 years since the beginning of the tech revolution in Silicon Valley. He's still alive and he writes today. And the edict from him, he has a book about it and writes a lot about it, is that every 5 minutes, something on your internet, your computer has to be updated. You have to change something and learn something new, right? And that is only accelerating with AI. Okay. And so you have to like bring the level of acceptance to this and just get over that that's going to be your life for the rest of your life if you want to communicate with people or do anything work wise. And I think the same thing with recovery and the growth process and the transformational process. If the process or the learning is not learning something new for learning something new's sake, but to continuously accept that you're growing and changing, and there will be difficulties in that, just like it's difficult to update this platform or update that password or do this or do that, whatever you got to do. It's the same thing. It's the same type of struggle, that living in process that I basically stole from Analyst and Shaft. But it's like your process is no longer quit and wait. It is continue to grow and accept that the difficulties of the growth are part of your life. And I think genuinely, I don't know if Dr. Lustig talks about, I can't which book, there's other books, people that talk about this idea that the ratio of work to pleasure in life for people is in the United States and now around the world backwards. People think of comfort and soothing and easy and want convenience, and that's just not how it goes. And it took me 50 years to learn it, my first half of my life literally, that the real ratio is the harder work, the change process, the growing and the working through it is the thing that takes up the most time. And then when you do get to those places where there's ease and comfort and joy, those are smaller by percentage, right? They're smaller parts of the process. And I think if people would invert them and accept that they need to be inverted in their life, and not strive for just easy comfort, ease and comfort, then I think they get along better. I do believe that. It's worked for me personally and for lots of folks we work with.
Yeah, yeah, it's hard when life is busy, right? When you have the husband and the job and the dog and the house and the kids and, everything, and you have all of your responsibilities. I feel like, because I don't have that anymore, and it's so much easier to work on comfort and ease in your life, right? And to do a little bit of meditation and to go out and have the sun shine in your eyes without your glasses on and to, do those kinds of things. When you're so busy, you have to catch it on the fly. You have to squeeze them in, so to speak. You have to squeeze in your meditation, but, it's worth it, I think, to put forth the effort to get to those things because the payoff is really great, and trying to structure your life in a way that you can get some of that in there. And, like we talk about the people that listen to this video and that, who, they're generally older women and who have time to do some of this work. But, it is work. It's work.
It is work. And we had an episode about 3 or 4 back. We talked about the anterior singular cortex. When you do hard things, part of your brain grows. And someone asked me, like, what good is that growing your brain? It said, so you can do hard things. You can continue to do hard things. And you have to not want to do it and actually do it. And that's what makes the growth, right? And that
Right.
it's actually, there's good science around that.
There is. And that creates effort-based dopamine, right?
Exactly. Exactly. It's amazing, really. It's if you let this process light on you, if you let this process become part of you and flip from the constant need, search, desire for ease and comfort. And you can attest to this, I think. I know I can for sure, and a lot of our folks can, is that the times of comfort, of ease, of joy, of celebration are like so much better if you've done work and you feel better and not physically, mentally, emotionally, and you don't feel shameful and you're, let's be honest, for a lot of folks are looking for, they're thinner and your A1C's down. You just feel better in general because you've done the work. And I want to proffer that it's because you did the work, you know what I mean, that you do feel better. Better than you could if you're searching it out in easy dopamine ways, right?
Yeah.
Easy, cheap dopamine ways.
Yeah. Cyrus talked about this in a lecture that I listened to that was really good, that was through my metabolic health practitioner training, and about the effort-based dopamine and how it creates pride, and how, when you have pride in something that you do, and it's not necessarily like, like when you're raising children and you're trying to have them learn something, or they're doing a project or they're in a competition and maybe they don't win and they don't place well, but they worked hard and they did the best they could. And they have a lot, you try to instill in them that pride and that work and the rewards that you get from that effort based dopamine, I think is really important.
I can't remember if he stole it from me or I stole it from him, effort-based dopamine. I really can't remember. He came out as a sugar addict on a summit about 8 years ago, and he just signed up, first time we've had him in 8 years, for the, diabetes reversal summit coming up in June. So, he'll be on, and I'll definitely ask him about effort-based dopamine, so, eh
That'll be great.
yeah, excited about that.
Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, I was shocked a while back. He's like, "For the first time, I'm admitting that I'm a sugar addict." And now he's grown to a huge YouTube presence and a practice, and he's a bariatric surgeon by practice.
Yeah, pediatric, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Dealing with the little kiddos that have the issues. All right. Well, hopefully this video gives you some ideas to think about
Yeah.
and to get out there and take the time to soothe yourself in healthy ways and to take care of yourself. And it doesn't have to take a long time. It's kind of like a lot of these somatic techniques and things can be so quick and easy and can be so good for yourself. So maybe, so even taking time out during the day, 2 or 3 times during the day to just calm yourself. And I'm looking forward to moving them into part of my recovery when something happens,
Yes.
that rocks my world. Yesterday, day before yesterday, a good friend of mine, her puppy passed away in a procedure because the puppy was born with some congenital heart defects and they had to go do a procedure on her heart and she didn't make it through. And we were crying hard together, me and my friend. And I knew in that moment when I was crying, I was like, oh my gosh, this is a setup for me when my voices come into my head. Oh, you need soothing. Oh, you know that, 2 bites of blah, blah, blah is faster than anything else. And because that is true, it comes with speed, right? When those
Yes.
chemicals hit your body, it's immediate. It comes with speed. And so I was on the ball, I called 5 different people to get somebody on the line. I said, I'm calling till I get someone on the line. And then I had a great day. Everything went well. I ended up having we checked in with each other every hour for like 4 hours
Right.
just to make sure that I was okay. She was absolutely wonderful. And then I went to see my counselor the next day and we talked about because the first thing that I want to do right now is reach out. I'm like, I need help. I need help. Reach out. But in my counseling session, we talked about how I can work on doing some of these techniques, these somatic techniques and things that I can do to self-soothe myself. And then if I need help, I can reach out. And so it was a novel idea for me. I was like, oh my gosh, I can learn how to do those things for myself. And then if I still need help or for extra insurance, I can reach out to others. So
Yeah.
that was really exciting to me.
I love that. I really do. I'm going to breathwork this afternoon, my 4th or 5th class, 5th maybe, and it's just that kind of guys especially, I mean, things like somatic stuff where, you're like, hard and, it's like, but learning these self-soothing techniques, that we didn't learn as children because we had sugar. It was easy.
Yeah.
The easy
Yeah.
button, we just pushed it and bing, and we didn't put 2, this is what I wanna make clear. We didn't put 2 and 2 together. We didn't say to ourselves, like, I use this a lot, it's like, it's not like you're an adult and you needed a beer on a Friday from a rough week and you were gonna chill for a couple beers and whatever. You knew you were gonna numb out a little bit. This is just, you know, you start to feel a little anxious, irritable, weird, depressed, and you just wouldn't it the craving, and this is one of my biggest thought problems. The craving manifests from the deep limbic brain to the frontal cortex, and it says, "It'd be nice to have a piece of chocolate." It actually talks to you. It has a voice that was generated from the need for the dopamine or the dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine. You know my little spiel there. So, yeah, it's the awareness is what this podcast is about. The awareness of what is actually going on is the exciting part.
Yeah, yeah. I wrote down 2 words while we were talking a little bit earlier. I wrote down acceptance and awareness.
Yes.
And those 2 words are really, really important. You have to accept reality, right? And what's going on, but you have to be aware before anything else can happen. Awareness has to come. And
Yeah.
so hopefully people watching this video will learn, can be encouraged to pay attention, to be more aware of what's going on with their thoughts, actions, and behavior.
Yeah, I mean, I think the difficult part about awareness is raising it from the subconscious so that you understand that there is a time period, and the more abstinence you get, the longer the time period gets, because, you know, it's instant gratification when you're on the stuff because you're biochemically needing it, feeling like you need it. And it's just like you think about it, you eat it, right? But about 10 days or 20 days in, you have a minute or two to say, I don't really need sugar. I need something else, which is likely self soothing. It's something more that you can do to self soothe that doesn't include a substance. And when you make that quick connection, raise that from the unconscious that's been unconscious for decades, then you start to change pretty rapidly. And sadly, it messes up your pleasure of it. Because if you even persist after you have the thought of, I could go for a walk instead to eat the sugar, it's the joy is being taken out of it. And I hate to inform people of that, but it's true. You're like, I'll have this candy bar, but I'll feel better for a minute, but I don't really want to. And that's even worse. That gets to be even worse.
Yeah, the joy of eating the sugar, you're saying, will
Correct.
go away.
Correct.
Yeah, that's
I
what my
used to say we mess up their sugar use pretty badly.
yeah, yeah, that's what like this last binge, all I can remember is that I was miserable, like the high of eating the sugar, I was enslaved to it. It was, I didn't
You
even
have
enjoy it.
effectively raised it out of your unconscious. That's what's happened.
Yeah, praise God. Oh my God, that's just good news for me.
Yes.
I don't wanna forget it. I'm gonna journal a little bit about it too, because I don't wanna forget. I did journal about it in the notes that I write with my counselor. I had written something in there about, "Please don't let me forget how miserable I am." It was, like, right during the binge, I did some journaling, and it's powerful to read that when you're sober and abstinent.
Perfect. I love that. I love that. And people need these little tricks and tips to do it. These are the nuances to why we do this work and why they do this podcast is because they need the awareness, right? They need how does the awareness come? Because these are smart people, diligent people, informed people, committed people, and they still can't seem to get it because it's not really conscious yet. And so the beating of the drum of these podcasts and the work that we do in the groups is the awareness building, right? And it's also an exposure to people who have done it and can advise you. And everybody does it a little differently. I always like the analogy of, if you use every time you crave something to walk the dog, eventually you'll start to have a feeling, and the feeling or the thought that you need sugar is gone, and you'll be out walking the dog. You'll say, what the hell just happened? It's like or you're at yoga and you're like, how did I get to yoga? Because I was thinking of chocolate, right? Because you substituted new soothing methods. And I think that's you want to get that kind of unconscious process going, like you use the unconscious process of sugar over the years. In order to do
Yeah.
that, you have to be aware. Back to your words, you have to be aware. You have to
Yeah.
help
Well,
yourself.
and that is documentation of the transformation that we were
Yes.
talking about, right? When you're like all of a sudden, like going, wow, this is great that I did this instead of that, and being aware of that. Very cool. What a great talk today. Thank you so much, Mike, for being here today for this podcast. I
Thank you.
appreciate that.
Really appreciate it. It's always a pleasure. We have fun with it, and I genuinely feel as an INFJ and a recovering guy, this has been an evolution for me to be confident to, speak some of the stuff. And And yeah, it's helped me a lot. So I want to thank you too.
Well, and it's helped me a lot too. So I'm so grateful that we're here together. And hopefully you are too as a listener. All right, everybody, take care. We'll see you next time. Bye.